Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining today. I'm Kim.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Greg.
And we're from Hungerford Technologies.
Welcome to another Webex Wednesday. Every organization has a need to host virtual meetings, especially right now. And every Wednesday at 1 p.m., we live stream. So we talk about Webex. If you're on the eastern side of the states, you realize it is 4 o'clock p.m. However, it is 1 o'clock somewhere, Pacific time.
I laughed at that joke before you even said it. We want this to be interactive, so make sure to comment. No need to wait until the end. In order to comment, though, you're going to need to be logged into whatever platform you're watching on today.
Cool. All right. Let's dive into the prepared topic for today. What are we talking about, guys?
Webex. I said
yes.
That. Okay.
Sweet. More specifically, we're talking about Control Hub user licensing basics. Kind of a dense topic, but it's pretty approachable. We'll make it fun. So if you are the person at your organization who is responsible for being able to go into the Webex portal for administrative rights, this is absolutely targeted at you. If you're not that person, you might find out some of the things that that person's capable of doing, so you know how to ask them for something, and you'll be able to say, I know you can do this because we learned about it. So let's jump over to my screen share. All right, so I've got pulled up right now admin.webex.com. So if you're going to go to your Control Hub, which is what they call it, the admin portal for Webex, it's called Control Hub. You're going to go to admin.webex.com and you're going to log in, just like if you were logging into your own Webex account. And you'll get taken to see your account here. We're Hungerford, so that's us. And we're going to click on Users. So this is that user view where we can go control who has access to things, who is allowed to host meetings, who's only allowed to be an administrator, who's not allowed to be an administrator, those types of things. So if we want to create a new user, we would jump in and we'd go straight over to create new users.
Question, really quick, because you're flying through.
I am.
That main screen, I mean, it seems pretty basic. You have your first name and last name. So those are assumedly your users for your group.
Yep.
What is display name? Like, I'm assuming that's like when I'm in a meeting, it just says Zach Goins.
It's a good question. So if I want to edit those two things, I'm going to do that because I think it'll make more sense in answering the question.
Why don't you, can you edit my name? Am I on there?
You do exist. Let me do you.
Oh, that's surprising. Hey, there we go.
So if we edit you, you've got Zach, first name, Goins, last name.
Correct.
Goins. Don't say
Goins.
correct.
Hey, you could say it different ways.
All right. So display name is just the combination of first name and last name usually.
Okay.
But what usually gets people is, so this is what you look like in the system. It's what I'm going to look you up as.
Okay.
This is what people in the world are going to see by default when you're logging into your Webex account somewhere. It's going to display you as that. So a lot of times what will happen is someone will come in here and they'll change this to fix it because, like, I want to go by Zachary, all right, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Then they don't touch this.
And it just stays that way.
And they're like, I fixed it. Why is it broken? So actually, good question, Zach.
Sweet. There we go.
Mr.
So the rest seem pretty simple. That's my email, status and actions. I once again, I can assume that status means I'm just on line.
No, actually, active means that your account has almost all the time you're going to see active here. Anything else means like the account hasn't fully been created yet. So it might say invite pending, or it might say a couple other ones like deactivated or something like that. Usually it's either green or yellow or gray, like it's been set up but not invited. It's been invited but only partially completed, or now they've completed the setup and they're an active account.
Perfect.
If not, they're online right now. Good question.
There we go.
And you have all sorts of other options when you click on actions, which are just the one.
Oh, it's three little dots. I thought it was like, we're not to actions yet. This is blank, but I see what it is.
I think they expected this to be more because it doesn't just say deactivate user, but maybe there's more coming. We'll see.
Who knows?
Yeah. So managing users. All right. So let's say it's time to add a user because it's time to add a user. There are a variety of ways that could happen, but I come in, I click on manage users. Now this page is going to be kind of the central pivot of what we're going to talk about. So I'll go through these first two things, which are just kind of saying what they are and why we're not going to talk about them today. Here's where we're going to focus. So first, Active Directory sync if you set up Active Directory sync, which basically is a good thing in most situations, your organization, in order for you to log into your computer, you have a name that your company says is your name. This is going to say, let's just use that same profile instead of creating another system that says who you are. And so you synchronize that. The next thing is auto licensing. So it's time to add somebody for the first time. I can set this up so that it automatically populates the rights for the user to be the same as what I've said I want to happen every time. So I can modify that, activate it, deactivate it. We actually usually have one. I actually deactivated it before we started so that it won't interfere. I want you guys to see what it looks like if you don't go and interact with these two things. I would say from what I've seen, less than half of people I've worked with actually do have Active Directory sync enabled. If you're curious about it, ask us. We can go into details. That's there's some advantages, but there's also disadvantages. All right, so getting into how to create that user for the first time. One thing I'll fault them on the UI here is it's not obvious that these gray boxes are clickable buttons. I've done these trainings many times and people are like, you want me to, there's nothing to, oh, you want me to click the big box? I guess. So it's not intuitive. Click the big gray box. All right, so I'm in the box and then this is always scary. It's like, whoa, why am I getting this warning? All it says is, if you go do this, it's going to invite somebody in their email.
Automatically. Yeah.
You're like, I want them to get an email. And it's like, whoa. If you do this, it's going to send them an email. So, I mean, it should be what you're expecting. So I'm going to hit next. I can come in here. I usually tell people just do names at the same time. It's a simpler setup process. If you already know the names, put them in now. But the only required field is email address. So if you only know the person's email address, and there are reasons you might not have their name correctly spelled yet or something, and we don't want to make it one more thing to delay you, just put an email. But if you can, we'll do something like fake test at hungerford.pec. All right, the next trip up usually that happens is I say, okay, cool, I'm done. Why can't I click next? And the reason for that is you have to click this slightly less than intuitive, again, plus button. And now I've got them added, and now it makes sense. Okay, now I'm going to go put in my next person, and you can add at a time.
I was just going to say, why would they make you do that? And then when you see it below, it's like, oh, you can add multiple people at a time. That's actually kind of intuitive, though. Like, that's kind of nice that you're able to add multiple people. Because say you had, like, I don't know, a class. Something like that. That would work.
Yep. Okay. So this lets me pull in a couple at a time. And I feel like once you see the first one, it's intuitive. And once you've seen us do this once, it makes sense. All right, so I'm going to add these two. I'm going to hit next. And now it's going to say, this is what you told us. Is this what you meant, right? Because maybe I messed something up. It's a chance to review. Then I'm going to hit next, and it's going to take me to this provisioning screen. And a lot of times, this is where we see people miss something when they're kind of new to this or haven't done it in a while. They do those first steps with no problem, and this is where they get tripped up. It is a little bit, like, what do all these things mean? I don't know. I don't want to break it. Let me just hit add and see what happens. So covering it briefly, Webex Teams is like a chat app. It's a team collaboration, the ability to send each other messages like Slack or Microsoft Teams or things like that. Webex has their own version of this. It's a great product. If you want to enable that for people, check this box. If you don't want that to be specifically enabled for your users, uncheck this box. That's pretty straightforward.
Pretty easy. Yeah, makes sense.
This one's probably the most confusing one. Cisco's kind of got an overlapping Venn diagram of what their products do. And right now, you can hold a meeting inside of Webex Teams, but you can also hold a meeting in like this full-on Webex Meetings application. If you've used Microsoft Teams, a lot of organizations say things like, you know what, when it's a Teams meeting, that should be only internal. Don't try to get external people into a Teams meeting. But if you're going to have external people, do a full virtual meeting like Webex, that kind of platform. So this right here gives me the ability to use Webex Teams to hold meetings of more than 3 people.
I think it's also we should also note that Webex Teams and meetings are also based on iOS, Android, Mac, PC. So that's fully integratable with a lot of different devices that you might be using. I pretty much live in an iOS Apple environment. besides working for Hungerford. And the integration on my phone to my PC to my Mac is astounding. Like, it's really, really impressive that everything functions pretty seamlessly.
Are you talking about like if you get a message while you're at your desktop?
Correct. Yep.
Go ahead, tell me the story. You get a message. So I message you at your desk and you respond.
Yep.
See that on your desk.
Yeah.
And I see it where I am.
You got it.
And you get up and walk away.
Yeah, I get up and go check the mail. And Greg messages me back a picture of his dog. When I'm at the mailbox, I can check Teams or meetings. It depends on what we're in, with a chat or a video, and I can still see it there. It's integrated. So, I think that one question that somebody might ask is, this is great. I have users, but I have users on different platforms using different devices. Will it still work? Yes, it totally will. It'll work great.
Yeah. So that kind of turned into a bit of a plug for Webex Teams, but that's cool. Webex Teams is a good product. Here's where we're really focused on with our webinars to date. We've been talking about the full Webex Meetings application. So your organization, most organizations only have one site. We actually have two different sites. Have only one site if you only need one site. Don't make two if you don't need two. It gets confusing to provision. Now I have to think every time, wait, is this the user that's going to go under Hungerford Tech, or is this the user that's going to go under Hungerford? If you don't need to split them, don't split them. We need to split them, so we do. So when I'm setting up a user for Hungerford Tech, I like them to have Teams, I like them to have meetings, and then I want them under this account. This gives them the ability to host WebEx meetings, that full, I'm facing external WebEx meetings type of host. I can give you my personal meeting room URL, all that kind of experience. The last one is WebEx calling. We're not going to go over that. We have WebEx calling. If you don't have WebEx calling, you won't even see this option. But if you do see it, don't check it unless you want that person to also have phone calling capabilities.
And Greg, I'm going to quick interrupt you because we actually have a question that is relevant to that from Rio. He asked, how can you tell if someone has hosting permissions?
Good.
So I think that kind of goes into that when you're provisioning a new user, but maybe we can talk about that next too. Once we're done.
Great question. So in here, where I'm viewing right now, when you're setting someone up for the first time, if you don't check one of these two WebEx Enterprise Edition boxes, your setup probably will only have one unless you have multiple sites. If you don't check one of these, they don't have host permissions. If you later on are trying to go back and look up what somebody has, which is actually a great time to pivot here. I was going to skip this last part anyways, so let me just address that. This is calendaring services. If you don't know what this is, it's valuable, it's important, and it's not part of the topic we're covering today. So it is an important thing. If you don't know what it is, don't worry about it. If you
Good thing I awkwardly interrupted.
Yeah, make sure you know what it is. So I'm gonna actually hit cancel because I don't want to create these fake users, but let's pretend I hit add. At that point, they're gonna receive an email. Once they get set up, and later on you're thinking to yourself, how do I know who has host rights? It's been a couple months, I wanna see who we've given it to. There are a couple ways to do it. The first thing you can do is, if you wanna know, does Rio have hosting rights? I'm gonna come in and type in Rio or Greg. I'm gonna search for Greg. And I'm gonna click on Greg, and I'm gonna click on this edit button. For some reason, my brain wants to click the pencil edit every time, which is what we showed earlier, where you can edit the name. I don't know, the word edit, that's just what it makes me think of. But it's this word edit over here. So when you click that, it takes you back to this provisioning screen, and now I can see what is Greg set up for. If Greg has not got a checkbox here, if Rio doesn't have a checkbox here, you're not a host. That's okay, but I think more often the case is you're actually trying to look holistically. How many of my users, which of my users at a glance, a whole big list have host rights? And that actually ties perfectly into the next step. So I'm going to go into that one. So the first topic we covered was how to create a user. We've done that. The next topic I wanted to hit on is, what if I want to do a large change, modify a couple things at once, see who has host rights and who doesn't, and possibly change that all at once. And that comes by going here and exporting that user list. So I export. It says, do you want to export? I say yes. It's going to turn it into an Excel CSV. And I'm going to open it. So this is a little bit noisy. when it first opens. What I tend to prefer to do in Excel is, as long as you're selected anywhere on the data and you hit Control T, that's the shortcut to turn it into a friendly table. So I say, okay. Now everything is spread out a little more so you can read what the column headers are, and it gives you some of that line separation.
Yep.
A little bit more friendly. So here are the things I like to key in on right away. You've got your name, your display name, your email, whether or not you're active. You can see we have a couple that are not verified on our account. The last time you accessed service, this is a big, ugly UTC string, and it doesn't really mean anything to me as a human being. So they do give you the friendly version of that right here, which instead of showing me the last date you accessed, they show me days since last accessed. And this is per user account, which means I can quickly come in here and see, do I have, like, maybe I'm over provisioned right now and I need to go remove a couple people. This is how I would tell you to do that. Go into your modify users, export the CSV, sort by last access, because this gives you a very easy way to key in on people who might be worth removing. It doesn't mean, it's been 112 days. That means we want to take it away from him. Maybe he's the owner, he's too busy to be bothered to log into this. Maybe that's the deal. But it does give you a good view of, at a glance, who might be the most likely to need to be removed. All right, continuing to the right, you're going to a lot of times see a lot of blanks here. If you have calling set up, that's what these ones are for. As we continue to the right, basically from H over, you're just going to see a lot of trues and false. And this is a little bit less than, it's a little more computer interaction than it feels like for human interaction. It wants just that binary. Anywhere it says false, that means in the control hub, they've got a blank checkbox. They're not enabled. Anywhere it says true, it means the box is checked. It means they are enabled. So when you go through this, you can quickly go through and see these are some very specific settings that the average organization is not going to interact with. So I'm going to skip all the way over to the ones that I think are the most common and most important, which is one more, Teams. So this column right here corresponds to this provisioning step right here. The meetings one, the one we spent too long trying to explain. This Webex Teams corresponds to this Webex Teams checkbox. Then you've got multiple URLs. So we've got hungerford.webex and hungerfordtech.webex. That corresponds to these two checkboxes. So when it's time to do a mass upload, or in the example we had the question for, if we want to be able to quickly see who's been given access and who does not have access, I can just come in here and sort by true or filter by true. Now I'm only showing people who have Teams. Let me do the other one and say only show people who have the Hungerford Tech site. So just true. And then in order to make a lot of this less busy, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just get rid of a lot of this and say hide. And now it's a little bit friendlier to line up with who's who. But I'm not deleting columns because I don't want to change the way that this is actually structured, because I want to make sure I can see who I'm changing, but then also take this file. If I want to make changes, I can come in and say, you know what, we want to take away Blake and we want to take away Ben. All I have to do is change those trues to false. And now, kind of answering two things at once, I can see who has it, but I can also modify this. Maybe I have 100 users and I want to change them all at the same time. I can save this file. And then when I come back to this screen, instead of choosing to export, I can choose to import. So when I click on this, import history. Nope, wrong line again. Let's try that again. When I click on this, there we go. This is what I wanted. Import, click to browse. I just navigate to wherever that file I just saved is. It's okay that I did that fancy thing that made the table turn blue. It's going to strip that out when I save it as a CSV, so it's okay. It's all going to stay preserved. The simple version of what we just did is we looked at everybody. Anywhere it said false that we wanted to make it true, that gives them that right for whatever the column header is. Anywhere it was true that we want to change to false. It's actually pretty smart. It explains it up here. There's a way to say like only make changes. If for some reason there's something new, don't add a whole user or something like that. There's little bits of thought that have gone into making sure you only change what you mean to, but use your head as you're going through this. Pay attention to what you're doing until you've learned it. Long-winded way of answering that question, but that is the answer to that question. I look at it in two ways, directly here or in the export, depending on what I'm looking for.
Well, it's good to know, because it's like, you know, for a small company, if it's 10 people, it's like, oh, I can go in that one way and just click on the one person and I'm good. If it's a larger company like we have, then you can go into the Excel file, the CSV, and then make the changes there, because it's less time consuming than going through everything. Unless you have a lot of time on your hands.
Yeah. If you have a lot of time in your hands, do whatever you want. Last thing I want to cover, and that's the entire thing I wanted to cover here, except for two more things. One is, do you want to quickly see who we've given admin rights to? You can just filter that right here. So if I clear this filter, we've got a whole bunch of listed here. And instead, I can just say, show me who administrators are. Now I can see all the administrators on my account. How do I make somebody an administrator? All right, so you click on the user. On the right-hand side, you've got security, roles and security, administrator roles. And now you can go through and decide what you want to give them. So a full admin, go over the help text, tells you what they get. There are subversions of that as well. So maybe I want to just give read only. Zach, I want you to be able to see everything, but I don't want you to make changes.
Sounds about normal for me, but that's okay. Let's keep going.
And then we've got partial administrator. So I can see everything, but I also can edit some things. It's pretty clear when you scroll over what it is. So just look for what you're expecting. And if you are at this layer of complexity, that's fine. If you're not, just choose who has it and who doesn't. Give them full admin or no admin. If you choose no admin, Zach, if I make you a non-admin here, if you try to go to admin.webex.com and log in, it'll just say, sorry, you don't have access.
That makes sense.
If you want to take away admin rights, yeah, you do that here. If you want to grant them, they do that here. The other thing is, how do I know if I'm oversubscribed on licenses? So you might see when you log into this portal, the first view it shows you, you'll see a pop-up sometimes. They'll say like, hey, by the way, you paid for 10 and you have 11. Can you go please clean that up, sir? And so the easy way to do that is to just double check on your name here at the top. Subscriptions up on the top right. This will summarize what you've got, how many of each that you have, and how many have been allocated, and you can see directly where. So 106 are allocated here, whereas 21 are allocated here. Now I can go use that CSV to go figure out, okay, I need to remove 2 from this group, and just go find that group and remove it. All right, so that's the prepped topic. Zach, did you have any other questions you wanted to interrupt me for that you waited for until the end?
Yeah, I have one from the beginning that I just remembered that I wanted to interrupt you. So if you want to show your screen again.
Sure.
So say, because I've done this before, I'm willing to admit I'm human. Say I'm adding a user to like an Active Directory on a server, right? We'll compare the two. So I go to users and I go to manage and I start to create the person. Their last name is spelled G-O-I-N-S instead of G-I-O-N-S. I spelled it wrong. It was an accident. I get to the end. I fix everything. I make everything. I send it out to the user. They get the email and they go, Zach, you spelled my name wrong. I didn't see, because I know in AD, you have to sometimes you have to completely erase the profile and then rebuild it. Is there an edit on here with all these edit options that we've been given to edit the email, or is it the same thing where I have to completely delete everything and then rebuild it from the start?
I'm going to qualify my answers a little bit for a couple of scenarios. So if you have Active Directory sync turned on, you shouldn't need to come in here and touch anything.
Perfect.
Because you're going to create that user.
I was more or less comparing, but I get what you're doing.
If they've been created in your Active Directory, they should automatically show up here. They should automatically be assigned the auto assignments that you've given them, which this is going to look familiar. It's just that screen before.
Hey, look at that.
What you want to give them. If you spelled it wrong in Active Directory, then in that scenario, you have to go back to Active Directory and do whatever Active Directory requires you to do to fix it.
Because from the source, you have to change it so that.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
And
so if I was to change it here,
Well, I mentioned there are some downsides. If you try to manage users and edit here and it's Active Directory sync, I actually can't just come politely rename you. I actually have to go back to Active Directory to make these changes.
Oh, but that's even grayed out down there.
So these will be locked. But so now the other version of what I think you were originally asking is if I spell your name wrong when I set you up. So we're going to say there's no Active Directory sync, which is probably the most common way I see it.
Most common. Correct.
I come in here, I say manually add user. I go to type in your last name and I spell it wrong. And it's spelled wrong in the email. Now it matters. If it's just spelled wrong in when I'm typing your name, we're fine. But if I get it wrong in the email, I have to start over.
Also,
because of what we just had on the screen for a second, which is this.
Yeah.
This is like that primary key, that thing that is unique to this user. And another important thing is you, the user, will never get your invite because the email's wrong.
I was just going to say that. It would probably be more likely that you misspelled the first name and they would still get the email. But in any sense, if something is spelled wrong, you're saying that you would have to completely restart anyway.
Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah, you would, because you wouldn't get the email. I answered my own question.
You have to basically kill this account.
Yeah.
Which we pointed out earlier under all these other actions. Deactivate user, and then go start over and re-add. You also, commonly I'll see like, if I set you up and I just put in your email address, every now and then I'll see this weird thing where a user shows up as undefined, and they go into a meeting and it's like undefined is waiting in your meeting room. And it's like, what is this? It's usually here. That's where you fix this. It tried to do something automatic and it didn't work.
Okay. Cool. I mean, that answers my question. I have no more.
That's a good question. So I think that's our topic for today. I'm going to recap just to say, what did we cover? So we covered how to create a user, how to provision a user, how to provision multiple users or make changes to users, export CSV and then upload it back just by changing the trues to falses and the falses to trues. And then we took a little bit of a look at how to give other people admin rights and to kind of sort out if you're oversubscribed, the fastest way to get back in compliance. Cool. Thank you everyone for joining today. Kim, do we have any other housekeeping we want to cover before we wrap?
I don't think so, unless you don't already have virtual meetings. And if you don't have virtual meetings, reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you and get you more information. So thanks so much for joining us today, guys.
See ya.
Bye.